The violet swirls of Zorvath. Faye filled the main view screen of the USN Atlantica, its lush continents veined with glowing rivers that pulsed like a sleeping giant's veins. Captain Lisa Hayes drummed her fingers against the armrest of her command chair. The rhythmic tap-tap, tap drowned out by the bridge's ambient hum. Outside the reinforced glass, thousands of slender, bioluminescent figures floated in protest, their synchronized glow forming shifting patterns that spelled out accusations in the universal trade language. "Message incoming from planetary surface," announced comms officer Rivera, her fingers dancing across the holographic interface. "It is the high speaker again," Lisa sighed. "Put it through." The main screen flickered, replacing the planet's view with the angular face of Vaeles, his translucent skin rippling with indigo distress patterns. "Human vessel," the Zorathi leader intoned, his voice carrying the musical lilt of his species. "Your continued presence violates the sanctity of our peaceful system. You must depart immediately." Lieutenant Jake Morrison leaned against the tactical console, his arms crossed. "That is the third time today, Cap. They really don't like us." Lisa rubbed her temples. "They think we're monsters just because we won the last war." She straightened in her chair. "High Speaker Vaeles, we come in peace. Our mission is purely diplomatic. Your very existence is a threat." Vaeles interrupted, his bioluminescence flashing crimson. Behind him, Lisa could see the floating crystal spires of the Zorathi capital city, where more of his kind gathered in glowing clusters. "Your species solves every conflict with violence. Your history is written in blood and conquest." On the bridge's lower level, Ensign Chen muttered under his breath, "Says the race that has never faced the Vorak." Lisa shot him a warning. "Look before addressing the screen again. We understand your concerns, High Speaker, but isolation won't protect you forever. The galaxy is dangerous. Danger you bring with you." Vaeles gestured sharply, and the camera panned to show the sea of floating protesters outside. Their glowing bodies formed a massive, pulsing symbol, the universal glyph for stop. Hundreds carried crystalline signs that shimmered with projected text, "Humans, Fey-War." "No more violence," Jake snorted. "They're literally protesting us in zero. Gee, that is commitment." Lisa ignored him, keeping her voice calm. "High Speaker, we're requesting permission to send down a diplomatic team. Let us explain." "Explain what?" Vaeles's voice rose, his skin patterns shifting to jagged, angry lines. "How your united Earth has subjugated a dozen systems. How your military outposts now ring the galactic arm. We want no part of your empire." The screen went dark as the transmission cut out abruptly. The bridge crew exchanged glances. Outside, the protesters' glow intensified, their formations shifting to form a massive, pulsing X, the universal symbol for rejection. "Captain," said Science Officer Durand, studying his scans, "their orbital platforms are powering up defensive systems. Nothing that could penetrate our shields, but..." Lisa nodded. "They're making a statement." She turned to Jake. "Prep the diplomatic shuttle. We're going down there." Jake blinked. "They just told us to leave," repeatedly, with glowing space protests. "And we're going to answer them, peacefully." Lisa stood, straightening her uniform. "Rivera, open a channel to the surface. Tell them we're sending a team of 4. No weapons, no armor, just words." As Rivera worked the console, Jake moved closer to Lisa, keeping his voice low. "You really think talking will work? They've clearly made up their minds about us." Lisa watched the protesters outside, their synchronized movements creating hypnotic patterns against the blackness of space. "They see us as conquerors, Jake. We need to show them we're protectors." She turned to face him fully. "That is why you're coming with me. And bring that prototype from engineering." Jake's eyebrows shot up. "The PRFA captain, that is, a peace offering," Lisa finished. "Now move out. We've got Pacifists to convince." As they headed for the shuttle bay, the bridge crew watched the protesters outside. The glowing figures had formed a new pattern now. a massive, pulsing question mark that filled the space between their ship and the violet planet below. Ensign Chen shook his head. They really don't get it, do they? We're not the ones they should be afraid of. On the view screen, long-range sensors pinged with an incoming alert. Duran frowned at the readout. Captain, you might want to see this before you go. Lisa paused at the door. What is it? Duran's face was grim. Scout drones just picked up Vorak signatures at the edge of the system. Still a few light, hawse out. But Jake and Lisa exchanged a look. The unspoken truth hung between them. The Zorathi's peaceful protests wouldn't mean anything when the slavers arrived. Lisa's voice was steel. Then we don't have much time, Jake. Double time it. As they hurried down the corridor, the protesters' glowing question mark outside seemed more appropriate than ever. The real question wasn't why humans had come to Zorvath. Faith, it was whether the Zorathi would learn the truth about the galaxy's dangers before it was too late. The Atlantica's shuttle bay hummed with tension as the diplomatic team prepared to descend. Captain Lisa Hayes adjusted her dress uniform, the gold trim catching the artificial light. Beside her, Lieutenant Jake Morrison checked his sidearm standard protocol, even for a peace mission. You sure about this, Captain? Jake asked, his fingers lingering on the weapon. They already think we're trigger. Happy monsters, Lisa exhaled sharply. That is why we're going unarmed mostly. She nodded at the crate between them. Human weapons disassembled, packed neatly for demonstration. They fear what they don't understand. Time to change that. The shuttle touched down on the Zorathi's floating crystal city, its spires glowing faintly in the planets. Violet twilight gravity here was lighter, the air thick with a sweet floral scent. A delegation of Zorathi awaited them, their slender forms shimmering with disapproval. High Speaker Vaelis floated at the front, his bioluminescence pulsing a cool blue distrust. Captain Hayes, Vaelis said, his voice melodic but edged. You ignore our protests. You bring violence to our home. Lisa stepped forward, hands open. We bring understanding. You think we're warmongers. Let us show you what we really are. Jake hefted the crate, the metallic clink of disassembled weapons inside, making several Zorathi flinch. One, a younger male with streaks of gold in his glow, flinched less than the others. His name was Kirill. Lisa recalled from the briefing, a junior scholar, known for questioning his elders. Vaelis' glow flickered red. You would arm us? This is your solution? Not arm, Jake said, setting the crate down with a thud that echoed across the crystal platform. Educate. He popped the lid, revealing the components of a standard-issue plasma rifle. This isn't just a weapon, it's a tool. And like any tool, it depends on the hands that wield it. The Zorathi murmured, their lights flickering in agitation. Kirill drifted closer, curiosity overriding caution. You disassembled it. Jake nodded. First lesson, knowing how something works takes away its terror. He began reassembling the rifle with practiced ease, each click and snap deliberate. Safety protocols here, trigger lock here, power regulator. See, it doesn't fire unless you want it to, and even then, only at what you choose. Vaelis' tentacles coiled tight. You speak of control, but your history is written in blood. Lisa didn't flinch. Our history is also written in survival. We didn't start the war with the Tarkalans. They attacked first, we ended it. She gestured to the rifle. It's not for conquest, it's for defense, for protecting what matters. Kirill reached out, then hesitated. Could I try? The older Zorathi hissed, their lights flashing warning colors. Vaelis' voice turned sharp. Kirill, step back. But the young scholar held his ground. What if they're right? What if we've been afraid of the wrong thing? His glow shifted, uncertainty giving way to resolve. Fear leaves us helpless. Understanding doesn't. Jake handed him the rifle's power cell, benign when disconnected. Here, feel its weight, its design. It's just a piece until you make it more. Kirill turned the component over in his delicate hands. His bioluminescence steadied, no longer flickering. It's precise, not chaotic. Lisa smiled. Exactly, violence is chaos. This is choice. The crowd's murmurs grew louder, some Zarathi drifting closer despite their elders' protests. A female with silver-tipped tentacles pointed at the crate. Show us more, Jake obliged, unpacking a pistol next. This one's simpler, single target, short range, ideal for personal defense. He demonstrated the safety, then handed it to Kirill, fully unloaded. Go on, hold it, get used to it. Kirill's grip was awkward at first, but he adjusted, his glow warming to a curious yellow. It's not what I expected. Vaeles watched, his own light dimming slightly. You would make warriors of us. Lisa shook her head. We'd make you capable to raise a difference. She pointed to the sky, where the Atlantica hung in orbit. Out there are species like the Vorak who see pacifism as weakness, as an invitation. Her voice hardened. We're not asking you to love war, we're asking you to survive it. A long silence followed. Then, to everyone's surprise, Kirill stepped forward, the pistol still in his hands. Teach me. The elders recoiled, but a few younger Zarathi, their glows shifting to match Kirill's, drifted closer. One by one, they reached for the disassembled weapons, their fear giving way to something new. Jake caught Lisa's eye, a silent question between them. She gave a barely perceptible nod. The lesson began. The training deck of the USN Atlantica hummed with nervous energy as the first group of Zarathi floated through the airlock. Their slender limbs flailed in the artificial gravity, bioluminescent patterns flickering erratic blues, the color of distress among their kind. Lieutenant Jake Morrison stood at attention near the weapon racks, his boots magnetically locked to the deck plating. Easy there, Jake called as a young Zarathi named Kirill tumbled past him. He reached out and steadied the alien with one hand. First rule of human gravity, imagine there is an invisible floor. Kirill's glow pulsed uncertainly. Your ship feels heavy. Jake grinned. Wait till you try the exosuits. Across the deck, Captain Lisa Hayes watched as engineers adjusted a dozen human-designed combat exoskeletons. The sleek frames were half the weight of standard marine issue, modified for Zarathi physiology. One of the pacifists, an elder with deep violet markings, recoiled as an engineer offered him a suit. This is an instrument of death, the elder hissed, his tendrils quivering. Lisa stepped forward. It is an instrument of choice. She tapped the chest plate of a nearby suit. This doesn't make you a killer. It makes you capable. Kirill drifted closer, his glow shifting to curious yellow. Show me. Jake nodded to the engineers. They helped Kirill into the suit, the servos whining as they adjusted to his slender frame. The moment the helmet sealed, Kirill gasped, the heads up display flickering to life with targeting data and force feedback controls. Your people evolved in low gravity, Jake explained, handing him a modified plasma rifle. This compensates. The rifle's tuned to your reflexes. Safety's here. It won't fire unless you mean it. The other Zarathi murmured, as Kirill lifted the weapon. His bioluminescence flared bright orange, shame among his kind. I shouldn't. Jake crossed his arms. You ever seen what Vorak slavers do to pacifist colonies? Silence. A hologram flickered above the deck, showing security footage from a ravaged Tarkalan outpost, melted crystal spires, bodies floating in vacuum. Kirill's glow darkened to deep crimson. Jake pointed at the rifle's sight. This isn't for attacking. It is for stopping that. One of the elders, Vaeles, floated forward. You ask us to abandon millennia of teaching. Lisa shook her head. I'm asking you to protect it. She gestured to the hologram. The Vorak don't negotiate. They don't respect protests. They see your glowing signs and think easy prey. Kirill's fingers tightened on the rifle. How do I? Jake moved behind him, adjusting his stance. Grip here, sight along this line, breathe out before you. The rifle discharged. A plasma bolt streaked across the deck, punching dead center into a holographic target. The Zarathi gasped. Kirill's entire body flashed blinding white. Shock. I did that. Jake clapped him on the shoulder. Clean shot. The other Zarathi stirred. One by one, they approached the suits. The elder who'd protested earlier watched as Kirill fired again, his glow shifting to a determined amber. "You're teaching them violence," Violise whispered to Lisa. Lisa's eyes hardened. "I'm teaching them control. Violence is what happens when you have no other options." She nodded to Kirill, who was now instructing another Zarathi on the rifle's safety. "Look at him. Does that look like mindless aggression to you?" Violise fell silent as Kirill patiently corrected a fellow pacifist's grip, his bioluminescence pulsing steady green, the color of focus. By the third hour, 12 Zarathi were hitting targets with fey accuracy. By the fifth, they'd mastered the exosuit's thrusters, darting through obstacle courses with growing confidence. Kirill had even started improvising, using his natural bioluminescence to distract targets before firing. Jake watched, arms crossed, as Kirill landed beside him after a flawless run. Not bad for a pacifist. Kirill's glow warmed to a hue humans had no name for. This doesn't feel like violence. He turned the rifle over in his hands. It feels like precision. Across the deck, Violise finally approached an exosuit. The elder's movements were slow, deliberate. When the helmet sealed, he lifted a rifle, and for the first time in his long life, took aim at something other than a philosophical debate. The plasma bolt struck true. Lisa exhaled. "Now you understand." Violise removed his helmet, his bioluminescence cycling through colors too complex for human eyes. "We feared your weapons made killing easy." Jake ejected the rifle's power cell, showing him the dead switch. It is always a choice. Today, you chose to learn. Outside the observation windows, the violet swirls of Zorath phase atmosphere glowed softly. Somewhere beyond it, the Vorak fleet lurked. But here, in this steel womb of human ingenuity, an ancient pacifist race was discovering something far more dangerous than violence. They were discovering agency. Kirill floated to the window, his reflection superimposed over his homeworld. When the Vorak come, Jake joined him. They'll find something new waiting. The Zarathi's glow brightened. Something better. The protest signs still glowed faintly in orbit as the last of the Zarathi demonstrators dispersed from around the Atlantica. Inside the ship's main hangar, Lieutenant Jake Morrison adjusted the gravity stabilizers on Kirill's exo-suit for the third time. The young Zarathi's bioluminescent patterns flickered between blue and violet nervous excitement. "You're gripping it too tight," Jake said, prying the Zarathi's slender fingers off the plasma rifle's stock. "It is not a rock you're throwing. It is an extension of your will." Across the training deck, a dozen other Zarathi floated awkwardly in their new exosuits, their natural buoyancy fighting against the artificial gravity. Captain Lisa Hayes watched from the observation deck, her arms crossed. The Zarathi high speaker, Violise, hovered beside her, his glow dim with disapproval. "This is a mistake," Violise pulsed. His voice translated through the comms. "We are a people of harmony, not this." Lisa didn't take her eyes off the training session. Harmony doesn't mean helplessness. Below, Kirill lined up another shot. The plasma rifle whined as it charged. His first two shots had gone wide, but this time, the target at the far end of the deck exploded in a shower of sparks. Kirill's entire body flashed bright gold, the Zarathi equivalent of a gasp. "I did it." His voice cracked through the translator. The Atlantica's alarms drowned him out. Red lights strobed across the deck as the ship's AI voice boomed. Unidentified FTL signatures detected. Multiple contacts, shields to full. Lisa was already moving, sprinting for the bridge. Violise streaked after her, his bioluminescence flaring panic. "White, what is happening?" On the bridge, the main screen flickered to life, displaying a tactical overlay. 12 jagged black ships had materialized at the edge of the system, their profiles unmistakable. "Vorak raiders," Lisa spat. She slammed into her command chair. "Time to intercept." 23 minutes at current speed, replied the tactical officer. "They're heading straight for Zorvath." Violise's glow stuttered. "The children, our floating nurseries are undefended." Lisa opened a fleet. Wide channel, All hands, battle stations, prepare to intercept Vorak raiding party. She turned to Vaelis. Get your people to safety now. The Zarathi high speaker didn't move. His glow pulsed slow, deep red, the color of shame. We have no defenses, no weapons. We dismantled them all centuries ago. A new voice crackled over the comms. It was Kirill, still on the training deck. That is not true anymore. The screen split, showing the hangar bay. The dozen Zorathi trainees had formed a loose cluster, their exosuits locking into combat stance. Each held a human plasma rifle. Vaselis's tendrils twitched. You can't be serious. You've never fought. We don't have to win, Kirill said, his bioluminescence steady now. We just have to try. Lisa watched the Vorak fleet's approach on the tactical display, 12 ships against 1 human cruiser and a handful of armed pacifists. The math was terrible. Then she smiled. Helm, plot an intercept course. Tactical, prep the shield disruptors. She leaned forward. And someone get me a channel to the Zarathi defense network. Vaelis stared at her. There is no defense network. Lisa's grin turned sharp. There is now. The Atlantica's engines roared to life, pushing the massive ship toward the incoming threat. On the view screen, the Vorak fleet resolved into individual ships, each one a nightmare of spikes and plasma cannons. A transmission came through, untranslated at first, the hissing, clicking language of the Vorak. Then the translator kicked in. Human vessel, Zarathi world. You will surrender both or be destroyed. Lisa let the silence stretch. She watched the tactical display as the Zarathi trainees scrambled to their own ships, delicate crystal skiffs never meant for war. Then she opened a channel. Vorak Fleet, this is Captain Lisa Hayes of the United Earth Starship Atlantica. You're trespassing in protected space. Laughter crackled back. Protected by what, glowworms and monkeys? Lisa's fingers danced across her console. A new signal went out. Not to the Vorak, but to the Zarathi ships now forming up beside the Atlantica. By people who've just learned the difference between violence and defense. She nodded to her comms officer. Patch me through to all Zarathi vessels. When she spoke again, her voice was quieter. You wanted peace sometimes. Peace needs teeth. The Vorak ships opened fire. Plasma bolts streaked toward the Atlantica. At the last second, the human ship's shields flared, but not to absorb the impact. Instead, the energy shimmered, twisted, and bounced back. The lead Vorak ship took its own plasma blast to the engines. The explosion lit up the void. On the training deck, Jake Morrison whooped. That is what shield disruptors do, kids. Their guns just became our guns. The remaining Vorak ships hesitated. That was all the opening the Zarathi needed. Kirill's voice came through the fleet comms, trembling but determined. All skiffs, pattern Delta, just like the humans showed us. The crystal ships moved, not in a head-on assault, but in a wide, enveloping arc. They fired not at the Vorak ships, but at the space between them. Plasma bolts crossed paths, creating a web of energy that forced the raiders to cluster together. The Vorak commander realized the trap too late. Break formation, they're herding us. Lisa's voice cut in. Atlantica, full barrage fire. Every human cannon unleashed at once. The concentrated fire ripped through the bunched-up Vorak ships. One after another, they detonated until only 3 remained, fleeing at full burn. Silence settled over the bridge. Vaelis floated motionless, his glow flickering through a spectrum of emotions. On the view screen, the Zarathi skiffs regrouped, their crystal hulls reflecting the distant explosions. Kirill's voice was the first to break the quiet. Did we just win? Lisa leaned back in her chair. You tell me. Outside, the Zarathi ships began to pulse. Not the pale blue of protest, but a vibrant, blazing gold. The color of victory, The Vorak fleet filled the view screen of the USN Atlantica, their jagged black ships like teeth against the starfield. Captain Lisa Hayes gripped the armrests of her command chair. "Tactical, give me numbers." Lieutenant Cho didn't look up from his display. 37 capital ships, Captain, twice our tonnage. Their lead vessel is powering weapons. On the secondary screen, the Zarathi Crystal. Skiffs floated in disarray, their bioluminescent crews panicking. The comms crackled with overlapping transmissions, pleas, prayers, the occasional burst of static. Jake Morrison slammed his fist on the console. "We need to get them organized, or this'll be a slaughter." Hayes nodded. "Open a channel to Kirill's skiff, now." The screen flickered to show the young Zarathi, his glow flickering between fear, blue, and determination. "Orange, Captain Hayes, we don't know what to do." Jake leaned into the feed. "Listen to me, Kirill. The Vorak expect aggression. They want you to charge blindly, so don't." Kirill's tendrils twitched. "But you said—" "Control," Jake interrupted. "Remember the training. Their weapons have a recharge cycle. 3 seconds between volleys, time it right. And you can slip past." A Vorak voice boomed across all channels, guttural and dripping with malice. "Zarathi scum, power down your engines. Prepare for boarding." Hayes muted the feed. "Cho, activate the shield disruptors. Jake, get me a firing solution on their lead ship." Jake's fingers flew across his console. "They're lining up for a broadside classic Vorak. Hammer first. Ask questions never." Outside, the Vorak fleet began to glow as their plasma batteries charged. The Zarathi skiffs trembled, some drifting backward. Then Kirill's voice crackled over the comms. "All skiffs form on me, human pattern delta." Hayes blinked. "Did he just—" Jake grinned. "Kid's been paying attention." The Zarathi vessels snapped into formation, their crystalline hulls refracting the growing light of the Vorak weapons. The disruptors hummed to life, invisible waves rippling toward the enemy. The Vorak fired. Plasma bolts streaked across the void, then twisted mid-flight, arcing back toward their origin ships. The lead Vorak vessel took the full brunt of its own barrage, its shields flaring before collapsing in a shower of sparks. Kirill whooped, his bioluminescence flashing victory. "Gold. Again. Hit them again." Hayes didn't celebrate. "They'll adapt Jake's status on those torpedoes. Locked and loaded, Captain. But we need to—" A proximity alarm shrieked. 3 Vorak frigates had broken formation, diving straight for the Zarathi skiffs. Kirill's voice tightened. "They're coming right at us." Jake punched the comm. "Skiff teams, remember the drill. Hesitation kills." The Zarathi didn't freeze. They moved. Crystal, skiffs spun gracefully, their human upgraded thrusters flaring. Instead of fleeing, they drifted just enough to let the Vorak overshoot. Then, as the frigates tried to correct, the skiffs unleashed pinpoint plasma burst straight into their engines. One frigate spiraled out of control. Another collided with its wingmate. The third erupted in a fireball that lit up the battlefield. On the Atlantica's bridge, Cho gaped. "Did they just—" Hayes allowed herself a small smile. "They just outmaneuvered the Vorak at their own game." Jake whooped. "Hell yeah, they did now, Captain. About those torpedoes." Hayes straightened. "Fire." The Atlantica shuddered as its payload launched. 6 sleek projectiles streaking toward the crippled Vorak flagship. They impacted in perfect sequence. Shield generator first, then engines, then the bridge. The flagship detonated in a silent, blooming fireball. For 3 heartbeats, the battlefield hung in perfect stillness. Then the remaining Vorak ships, those that hadn't been caught in the backfire, or the torpedo strikes, began to retreat. Their engines flared crimson as they warped away, leaving behind only wreckage and the glowing Zarathi fleet. Kirill's face reappeared on screen, his bioluminescence pulsing a color no human had ever seen before. something between awe and newfound confidence. "Captain Hayes, we did it." Hayes nodded. "No, Kirill, you did it." Jake clapped his hands. "And that, my glowing friends, is how you win a fight without becoming monsters." The Zarathi skiffs began to pulse in unison, their lights sinking across the void, a species that had never known victory in battle, now singing it across the stars. Hayes turned to Jake. "Think the council will believe the footage?" Jake laughed. "After this, they won't have a choice." Outside, the Zarathi lights grew brighter, their patterns shifting into something unmistakable, a salute. The bridge of the USN Atlantica hummed with quiet tension as the last Vorak raider blinked off the tactical display. Captain Lisa Hayes let out a slow breath, her fingers unclenching from the armrests of her command chair. The battle had been brutal, but short. Human tactics and Zarathi adaptability had turned the tide in minutes. Outside the viewport, the Zarathi crystal skiffs floated in formation, their once delicate hulls now scorched but intact. Their bioluminescent patterns pulsed erratically, a chaotic dance of shock, relief, and something new, something fierce. Jake Morrison wiped sweat from his brow, his plasma rifle still warm in his hands. "They held the line," he muttered, watching the Zarathi ships through the glass. "Never thought I'd see the day." Lisa nodded. Neither did they. A transmission crackled over the comms. Bailey's voice, usually so measured, trembled with an unfamiliar intensity. "Captain Hayes, we request permission to board." The Zarathi delegation floated into the Atlantica's hangar bay, their movements less graceful than usual, their glow flickering like a heartbeat. Bailey's led them, his slender form wrapped in a human-made tactical vest, the fabric stark against his violet skin. Behind him, Kirill stood taller than before, his bioluminescence burning a deep, steady gold. Lisa met them at the base of the ramp. "You fought well," she said simply. Bailey's hesitated, then bowed, not the shallow diplomatic gesture of before, but something deeper. "We owe you our lives, our world." His voice wavered. "And yet, I do not know how to feel." Kirill stepped forward, his glow flaring. "I do." He lifted his hands where the faint marks of a plasma rifle's grip still lingered. "For the first time, we were not victims. We were not helpless." His voice dropped to a whisper. It was good. The other Zarathi shifted, their colors rippling in agreement. Lisa exchanged a glance with Jake. This was the moment, the pivot. She crossed her arms. "Violence isn't the answer to everything, but sometimes it is the only language bullies understand." Aviles closed his eyes. "We spent millennia believing that to wield force was to become monsters, that peace meant surrender." He opened them again, his bioluminescence shifting to a fierce, unyielding blue. "You showed us another way." A murmur spread through the Zarathi, their glow synchronizing, brightening. Jake grinned. "Welcome to the club." Back on Zorvath, for the floating crystal city shimmered with celebration. The streets, once filled with protests, now thrummed with energy as Zarathi moved with purpose. Their movements sharper, their glow brighter. Human-made defensive emplacements dotted the skyline, their sleek metal a stark contrast to the organic spires. But no one tore them down. In the central plaza, Vaeli stood before a crowd of thousands, his voice amplified across the city. "Today, we are not the same people who begged the humans to leave." His glow pulsed, casting shifting light over the faces below. "We believed their strength was cruelty. We were wrong." He lifted a hand, and a hologram flickered to life, footage of the battle, of Zarathi ships holding formation, of Vorak raiders exploding under their own fire. "They did not teach us to love war. They taught us to end it." The crowd's bioluminescence flared in unison, a spectrum of colors never before seen on Zorvath. Fey gold for courage, crimson for resolve, deep blue for unity. Kirill stepped forward, his voice clear. "The Vorak will return. Others will come, but we will not hide." He raised his fist, and the crowd mirrored him, their glow blazing like stars. No more fear. The chant spread, a thunderous ripple of light and sound. No more fear, no more fear. Lisa watched from the Atlantica's observation deck, her reflection superimposed over the planet below. Jake leaned against the railing beside her. Think they'll be okay, she smiled. Better than okay. A transmission pinged, an official communique from the Zarathi High Council. Lisa opened it, and her eyebrows rose. Jake peered over her shoulder. What does it say? She read it aloud, her voice thick with pride. Effective immediately, the Zarathi Planetary Defense Force is hereby restructured and renamed the Shield of Haze. Jake whistled. Damn, that is going to piss off the Federation. Lisa folded the message, her grin sharp. Let it. Below them, Zorvath, Faye burned brighter than ever, a beacon in the dark. The Galactic Council chamber hummed with tension, its curved walls displaying holograms of the Zarathi Defense Force standing alongside human Marines. The footage looped. Once pacifist beings now moving in perfect tactical formations, their bioluminescence pulsing with determination rather than fear. A Tarkalan diplomat, his scaled face twisted in disgust, slammed a clawed hand on the table. This is an outrage. You've corrupted them, turned peaceful scholars into soldiers. His voice echoed across the chamber, drawing murmurs from the assembled delegates. Captain Lisa Hayes leaned forward, her fingers steepled. The dim light of the chamber caught the scars on her knuckles. Old reminders of battles fought so others wouldn't have to. Watch the footage again, she said, her voice calm but edged with steel. Look at their eyes, not their weapons. The hologram zoomed in on Kirill, the young Zarathi dissenter who had first taken up arms. His slender fingers wrapped around the grip of a plasma rifle, but his stance wasn't aggressive. It was resolute. Behind him, a group of Zarathi children played in the safety of the shielded city, their glow bright and unafraid. You see violence, Hayes continued. I see choice. They could have laid down their weapons when the Vorak came. They didn't. The Tarkalan scoffed. And now they'll spread your warmongering ways across the galaxy. A new voice cut through the argument. Vales, the Zorathi High Speaker, floated into the chamber, his bioluminescence shifting to the deep blue of authority. You misunderstand, he said, his voice carrying the weight of centuries of pacifism and the clarity of recent revelation. Humans did not teach us to love war. They taught us to end it. Silence fell. Even the Tarkalan hesitated. Vales gestured, and the hologram changed. It showed the Vorak flagship exploding under its own redirected fire. Then the moment after, Zarathi medics rushing to treat wounded Vorak survivors. We could have slaughtered them, Vales said softly. We chose mercy instead. That is the human lesson. Hayes nodded. A gun is a tool, like a scalpel. It can take lives or protect them. The difference isn't the weapon, it's the hand that holds it. The chamber remained quiet. Then, one by one, delegates began to transmit the footage to their homeworlds. 3 cycles later, the message reached even the farthest edges of the galaxy. Human outposts reported unfamiliar ships approaching, not with weapons drawn, but with questions. The Rixian matriarchy, a species that had once barred humans from their systems, requested tactical advisors. The Quell, who had never raised a hand in anger, asked for shield schematics. On Zorvath, Faye Kirill stood beside Jake Morrison on the Atlanticus observation deck, watching a new generation of Zarathi recruits train. Their movements were still awkward, their aim imperfect, but their glow burned brighter than ever. You changed us, Kirill said quietly. Jake shook his head. Nah, we just showed you what was already there. Across the galaxy, in 100 languages, a new phrase spread like wildfire. If you want peace, ask a human.